welcome to Your Sparkly Brand. We're here to inspire and empower entrepreneurs like you. This podcast is all about delivering high-value content that helps you grow your business. It doesn't matter if you have no budget and are still DIYing everything on your own. We're giving you the tips, tools, and strategies you need to build a sparkly empire. I'm Lauren Tassi, your copywriter and launch strategist, and I'm joined by my co-host, marketing and branding expert, Megan Gersh. Hi, Megan.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Good. I am so excited to introduce you to our guest today, Sandra Burciaga Olinger. Sandra is the founder of Grimy Goods, an independent media platform made for music discovery, where she and her team create inclusive journalism featuring up-and-coming music artists, as well as keeping readers informed on concerts and music festival announcements. Sandra has over 17 years of music industry experience, as well as a digital marketing background, and has been writing for over 15 years for a variety of media outlets, including Parents Magazine. Sandra and her husband live in Los Angeles, raising one awesome child. Together, they love exploring the outdoors, all things LA, and of course, going to concerts. Welcome to Your Sparkly Brand, Sandra. So excited to have you.
Thank you. I'm so excited here to chat with you both.
I love that you brought the sparkle with your earrings.
Thank you. I wasn't sure. I don't really have much sparkly stuff, but I had a lot of sparkly accents.
Yeah.
You can never go wrong with sparkly earrings.
So before we get into your story, we like to start each episode with our sparkly moment of the week. So Meg, do you want to kick things off? What was your sparkly moment this week?
Yeah, absolutely. So I just started working with a virtual assistant, doing some repurposing work. So I make a lot of video content online and I just want to make the most of that content. So making sure that it gets repurposed to other platforms. And I've been working with this awesome VA and she's been doing such a great job. And so, yeah, that's making me feel a little sparkly this week. What about you?
So we're going to get a little meta here. I just moved the podcast to a new hosting platform, and it's super cool because now if you listen on Spotify, you can watch it just as easily. It's just within the app. There's also an engagement thing. We're going to be asking polls. You can ask questions. So I personally generally listen to podcasts in Apple, but I'm going to make the switch to Spotify just because the interaction is so much cooler on the listener end. So if you want to check that out, maybe start listening on Spotify.
That's rad. What about you, Sandra? Do you have a sparkly moment you want to share?
I do. Today, this is the second week of training my, assistant editor to take on almost all the duties that I used to. And today's the first day without any feedback from me directly, and she nailed it. So from, the past 5 hours, she's been running Grimy Goods and she did it wonderfully with no texts, no emergencies, no glitches. So that's been a very big sparkle for me today.
It must feel so good.
Oh, it does. It's so nice to finally have someone there with me, rolling out so much content so I could focus in other areas. So it's great.
That's awesome. I love that.
All right. So Sandra, let's learn more about you. Why don't you tell us about your journey? How did you come to start your business?
Well, it started like most bloggers as a personal blog. And, it was basically just all the concerts I would go to and festivals. And at the time I was also into skateboarding a lot, lots of skateboarding events and art events, and started getting traction. And I realized there's too many areas here. I need to focus on one. And music is what I loved the most, indie and underground. And at the time, the magazine I was writing for, I didn't like how they edited so much of the real truth of stuff out, to appease advertisers, I imagine. So hence, light bulb, I wanted to create a blog, a music blog where you didn't have to be a professional, seasoned writer and to be able to talk, how kids do today, IRL and LOL, although I wasn't saying that back then, but, more of a loose lingo. And that's where we are today now. Everything's much more informal and much more loose, not so high strung in not only journalism, but, all forms of content.
I think that's one of the main things that kind of drew me to the Grimy Goods blog in the first place, was just that there is a sense of realness to it. You really make sure that is a kind of a core pillar of what that brand means.
Thank you. We try. It's an evolution, especially during these times, with so much content everywhere.
Yeah. So I know that you have a bit of a background in SEO and digital marketing. How did that background help Grimy Goods when you first got started?
Well, at the time I was experimenting with SEO for a hospital client that I had. Actually, no, it's my first marketing job at first. And they weren't embracing anything at the time, like social media. And at that time it was Facebook, make a Facebook group for your event and all this stuff. And then I was learning about SEO through just trade letters, email news blasts on marketing, and SEO. And it intrigued me. And I love science, analytics, just comparing, testing things. And I wrote my first, what was it, in 2010? It was a how-to, and no one was really doing how-tos back then. And it was how to market your band on little to no budget. And it was supposed to be a test, and it was so successful. Like up until maybe 5 years ago, it was my highest ranking post, more than 5 years. So as soon as I found out how well SEO works when you learn how to use it, I started creating more of those posts. And by the way, like, I also don't listen to my own advice. I should have updated that blog post and not lose the ranking, but I still haven't. And I plan on to. It's on my list now that I have more time to do stuff like that. But yeah, it was cool to see something get favored by Google, and it was a gift that kept on giving. And now I have a bunch of those laid out across the site. So yeah.
Do you have like any kind of like beginner tips for like if somebody's just getting started with SEO, like what are like the top 3 things that you need to pay attention to?
Experiment. That's what I always tell people. Like, just try it. If it doesn't work, it doesn't work. And also, like staying informed, reading SEO journal, reading like the email blasts that I've been getting for like the past 10 years. I don't even know what they're called now. But anyways, was a variety of like social media and then SEO. And I would always read those. Like, to me, it's all about experimenting and staying educated and on trends. So yeah, just go at it. Think of something that you're very knowledgeable at, and use those keywords in all the right places, and keep nurturing that same article, through social media, through other articles that are relative to it, and we could link back to it, keep feeding it.
So obviously you're a woman and you put women first in your business since day one. What sort of challenges has that been? Especially, 12 years ago when the music industry was a lot different than it is today.
Oh yeah. I mean, it's always been a challenge. And like, there's a lot of male bands that I love, especially in the early onset of Grimy Goods, and that were in punk and garage, which is a lot of the stuff I love. But, fast forward years later, some of those weren't such good guys, which I think, the whole Me Too movement, people opened their eyes. Everything happens for a reason. It was many more women-led music blogs and platforms were popping up to give a voice to more women. And which I'm so happy to see, because one blog is not enough. There was probably just me and like, I think Idolator at the time, which is now corporately owned, I think. But yeah, it's always been a challenge. It's always been at the early onset, like you weren't taken seriously because you're a girl and you're in a dress and you're at this punk show, or competition with other men that were bloggers. Like, I won't name names, but I went through some tough times, like being called certain names or being made fun of because of my grammar wasn't correct. And when it all boils down to it, it was always a man picking on a woman. And then also it goes with the fact that as a female blogger in the early days of music blogging, independent indie, which was so niche, having to feel that you need to be accepted too. So I was like, oh, okay, I really should write about these guys, or this or that. And I'm just so glad that's all behind me. And it's not just because of the times that have changed, but I'm much older now too. And I've learned so much. And like, once you, don't feel like you owe anything to anybody, I think you could really progress and make something magical happen.
I feel like there's been this big shift too. Like when we were growing up, it was very much just like women were competition with each other. Like it was very much like there was like the Spice Girls era where it was like girl power, but then it moved into like this like women are competition era. And now we're kind of like circling back around to like, women are friends, basically, like we don't have to be at each other's necks anymore.
Oh yeah.
So
and I felt that through the blog world too. Like, and it still exists. There's still, as much as women like to say girl boss and this and that, oftentimes it's just a facade. It's a bandwagon that many jump on, which it's something I've always grappled with because I've been doing this for so long and lifting other women. So you kind of see what's real, what's not. You kind of see performance, not. And it's a vibe you could pick up on. And it's also, you could just tell. But for the most part, yes, it is great. But it also doesn't mean that there isn't competition anymore, because there is. And I do think a little bit of competition is very healthy, so long as you use it in a good way.
So let's talk a little bit too about like inclusive journalism, because I know that that's really important to you. So we all know that the music industry is notoriously full of white cisgendered men. So how has your business and Grimy Goods kind of challenged that status quo a little bit?
Well, we've always, led with women, but a lot of the time the problem was like where we get the information from, which is a lot of it is press releases. And there really wasn't enough women represented in the genres we liked to write about. And then and on top of that, there wasn't many women of color, people of color, that honestly just started to change maybe 3 years ago, and this past year, especially, it's wonderful. Like I am seeing so many people of color in the indie and underground genres that I never did before. Like it was so problematic. Like I think 2-3 years ago, we started our open submission playlist to allow people that don't have publicity or don't have the means of how to market themselves to just submit their music. And I listen to every single song on there so I can hear what you're all about. And it really opened up a door for a lot of people of color, women of color, in the areas of music we write about, which is, our lens is not mainstream. Sure, here and there we'll announce some mainstream concerts because a lot of us love going to those. It really opened up a door for more people to be seen and heard. So that was really cool. And I love seeing a lot of the publicists I work with now diversifying the acts they bring on their roster, because that's always been a problem back then, especially in indie. Indie music's always been reserved for white cis males, but not anymore.
When I was over at Spaceland, we started booking like a bunch of festivals like that. Started to become like a big piece of the conversation was, like making sure that we were getting women onto the bills and like, people of color onto the bills and like making sure that it was balanced, because I feel like there was a lot of kind of talk around that subject of like, hey, like people are not being represented here. Like, just making sure that representation was a factor.
And sadly, it's still such a problem. Like I just saw a lineup today for a smaller festival. I haven't taken a deep dive into it, but I scanned the line. I'm like, where are all the women? I only see 2 women bands on here out of like 20. So I can't wait to take a deep dive into it I hope I'm wrong. I hope, it's at least 50-50, but like, it's still a problem, like 50-50 is not enough. Like it should be higher than that. Like how long has it been that women have been just on the bottom?
I think one of the interesting things you pointed out when you were mentioning publicity is, and I used to work in TV, so this was part of the conversation we had too, is it's not just about having representation in talent. It's that we need it in the behind the scenes roles too, because that's what helps bring more diversity in talent is when the labels and the publicity people are also representing different people and different races and genders. And, that's just so important to that becoming genuine and not just kind of performative.
Totally agree with that. And I've seen that change a lot in the publicity firms and agencies we work with as well, which is, it's good. It's wonderful. And yeah, I think it's not just, the artists, it's also the people behind the scenes. And that's one thing I do love, like one of the many things I love about Grimy Goods, our staff and some of the people that have been with us for the longest are all almost women of color. We've had some awesome men too. And I think we just have one now, but he's awesome. He's like our feminist ally and we love Steven. He's the best. But yeah, it's good to see these changes happening, especially the past 2 years. It's like Lizzo says, it's about damn time.
So I know you've overcome a lot of mental and physical struggles, whether that's, being the only woman in the room, the only person of color. What advice would you give to somebody who's going through something similar?
Just always keep pushing on, but also like for me, like it was just always keeping up with pushing out so much content on Grimy Goods and then socials, because Instagram and TikTok started becoming popular. And it's so much, especially when you have such a demand, and it can be so damn draining. I don't know how to translate to other people, but for me as a blogger, someone that owns a media platform, it was like, you know what, F this, I am not going to post this or this today. I just can't do it all. And that's the important thing about SEO, because it doesn't matter if I post or not, it's still going to get X amount of traffic. You know what I'm saying? But just to step away and take the break, take the day off. And for any women that are considering being a mother, that was probably my biggest struggle. Like, who cares? If that's what you want, do it. You can always climb back up and put yourself where you want, so long as you stay on with the trends, passionate about your work, and, educated on changing environments in whatever your industry is. But yeah, like when I became a mom, I saw my sites like traffic just go, which wasn't terrible because it was still good because of those evergreen posts. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, like it was really like disheartening, and it sucked because it's something you built from the ground up. And you just see it go like that because you chose to become a mom and spend your time with your child. And the pandemic came and it was like even more, but you can put anything on hold and still succeed is like my biggest advice to anybody, whether it's a mother, being a mom, or just, I don't know, taking a mental health break. Do it if that's what you want, and then climb back up.
What kind of advice would you give to somebody who's in that similar position of like, they have a business that they're trying to kind of upkeep, but they also kind of, maybe they want to start a family, or maybe they have another passion that's like kind of pulling them in another direction. Like, how do you go about balancing that? Like, how do you figure out like, this is the time I'm going to spend over here, and how am I going to spend this much time over here?
That's hard. Like, everyone's scenarios are different because especially when becoming a parent, it honestly depends on your partner. Having a great supportive partner is key. And that's what I have. And we're both very blessed with flexible jobs. I'm an entrepreneur. He is also an entrepreneur, but he does have a full-time gig as a director, but it's a very flexible job because it deals with live events as well. But yeah, the partner support and, believe it or not, money plays a huge role. If you have enough, a lot of people have enough money to get a nanny. Good for them. They're lucky they could do that. Some people can't do that. It's not an option. And it's not just not an option because they don't have money. Like, mentally they couldn't do it. I couldn't do that, and also we couldn't afford that at the time, but mentally I couldn't let go of the connection with my daughter those first formative years. Everything is situational, of how your situation is with your partner, how your finances are, and how your mental health is. So that's something to consider. Now it's like, looking back, and if I did have another, which I don't want another, I would full on get a nanny to help me or something, like, you need help. And then you're going to make tons of mistakes, especially balancing time. That is the hardest thing. But thankfully I had my mother helping me twice a week. So that was good. And then I had the staff, paid them, and they kept rolling things out, but everything was on a bare minimum. You might have to take a few steps back, but you'll eventually take a lot more steps forward. It's unfortunately what women are served, sadly, but it's definitely changing too. Like, women are always faced with choosing their career or, having children. And I don't care what anyone says, you can't fully have both. You have to sacrifice one thing or the other, whether it's your career, whether it's time with your child. And then you learn a balance and you learn how to keep them both.
So I know that you mentioned TikTok a little bit earlier. I know that you're not on TikTok. So would you ever?
You're so pro TikTok.
Listen, this is a pro TikTok podcast. I want to know, I'm so curious to hear why you haven't joined, and will you ever?
Well, listen,
get an
Linda,
account?
I'm going to tell you, Linda, if you're into TikTok, you've seen that little kid years ago. So cute. It's not that I'm against it at all. It's honestly, I didn't have the time to start another Instagram, but I have an assistant editor now. So it's on the to-do list. And I started my TikTok account. There's nothing on there. I've just been watching and learning. I got really busy again and I deleted it from my phone, and I just re-uploaded it 2 days ago because I need to learn this thing. And the other thing too is, like, I've always been the type of person with so many ideas, and I love creating content, whether it was Grimy TV or our Sonic Motherhood or whatever other incantations of Grimy we've had. And it just sucks when you don't have the time or the funds or the staff to stick to it. Like, there's a thing to be said about consistency. Sure, I could bring it back here and there, but I want my TikTok, which I'm still trying to figure out how I'm going to fuse Grimy Goods and Grimy Sandra. I want it to be consistent, because I'm not going to start it and just post once a day. I'm just getting the flow on Grimy Goods' Instagram, but I'm not against it. I'll probably start posting on it within the next 2 weeks. So I got to go look at all of your old stuff and learn.
Well, a lot has changed since then, but we could definitely sidebar about it if you want to.
Yeah, sure. Like, I have ideas and just, but I'm such a slow burner when it comes to executing new things. Like, I like to research, look at other comparable people and, come up with my plan. So I have time now, so I will do it, because I do see that there's a lot of value in it, especially in music. It's like, what am I doing? Why don't I have this yet?
Yeah, that's such a different response than I was expecting. Honestly, yep. I thought that it was going to be like, well, they don't pay indie artists, and like I was going to go off into this thing. But that's super interesting.
Do they not pay indie art? What do you mean they don't pay indie artists?
I do not know the side of that business well enough to say one way or the other. I'm sure they get a very, very, very small, like fractions of a cent from like uses of their songs, but you know.
Yeah. I mean, like I have all these ideas of what I want to do with it. And just like, I have a notepad full of ideas. You guys are probably very familiar to the full of ideas that don't fully get executed because you got to nourish all the other stuff you have going.
Yeah. My business coach calls that the ideas parking lot.
That is a good one.
Well, at least it's not the idea graveyard, because sometimes it feels that way. I feel like I want to like bring a point home too, is you said like your website's been doing better. I'm not anti TikTok, but I'm not pro TikTok, but I am pro SEO. And I think that that's where that pays off. Like you wrote a great blog post 14 years ago and it is still paying the bills today. And that's
it's gotten bumped on that.
Well,
first page.
if you updated it, it would be.
Yeah. I plan on it. It's on the parking lot.
Yeah, it's not in the parking lot. You know, that's just Google, email, those sort of, things versus like the shiny object syndrome. If you don't have the energy for TikTok, but you still have these sort of foundational pieces of your business, then don't get swept up in needing to be on TikTok. Just for anybody who's listening and feeling a little overwhelmed by that, because I know there are a lot of people.
Exactly. Master the areas you have going, nurture them. And then when you do have like more time, which I do now that I'm done training Patty, who's been fantastic, use that open time for what you had planned. But yeah, I love SEO. SEO is so fun. Every time I create a new article that's meant for SEO, and it's usually lists, but our lists aren't just, BuzzFeed, like here's a big header, we talk about it too. But yeah, we have several ones. And which one just did really well? It was at the height of the pandemic and I was running in our neighborhood because that's all I could do at the time. We really didn't have much to do. And I played Running Up That Hill all the time. So I was like, this is such a great song. And then I saw, I think the year prior or whatever, Meg Myers, an indie artist, performed it. And she had a beautiful cover. So I was like, I need to make a post of all my favorite Running Up That Hill covers. So that has been the number one ranking post ever since Stranger Things came out. So it's kind of fun seeing an article that you didn't know would ever get, Google first page. And now it's feeding all my traffic for the past month. It's awesome when you write something and sometimes you forecast something, and it's awesome when it does take off. But that was so unintentional. I was like, what?
Yeah, what a premonition.
Right? Such a good song. But now I'm like kind of tired of it.
It's like, I don't know if you've seen, like have been a few TikToks that have come out where it's like every DJ this summer, and then it's like the trap version and like the house version, and it's like every single version of Running Up That Hill. Anyway.
Yeah, SEO is awesome. It's probably the coolest thing. And I get people, and I'm sure you can relate, Laura, when people want to pick your head about SEO, and you too, Megan. And it's not something you can just have in one conversation. Like when people ask me, I'm like, oh man, like here's some really good sites and newsletters I get. It's just an ongoing education. There are some key things, but it's not something you could teach somebody over a day.
Totally. So can you talk about was there one like aha moment or like turning point in your business? Like, was there a moment where you're like, oh, I think Grimy Goods is actually going to be like the thing for me. Like this is actually going to be a thing that can pay the bills.
I had that aha moment. I would say, okay, when did concerts fully start coming back? It was last June, I think, or May. And one of our affiliates is Ticketmaster. And I think we sold over $1 million in tickets within, I think it was, 8 months, which is huge for the little, our little blog. I call it the little blog that could. But anyways, I had my aha moment when shows came back and I wasn't freelancing or working for anybody else. I mean, I had my personal brand as me and the partnerships I would do and side hustles like directing commercials and whatnot, because we all pivoted during pandemic. But my aha moment was really, last summer, and having the time to dedicate to Grimy Goods and seeing how well it did, and not letting imposter syndrome push you down anymore, and realizing what you should be charging too. And no, I'm sorry, but I'm not going to give you free promotion anymore either. I mean, I'm down with some of our advertisers and partners and people we've worked with for so long and have such great relationships with. So yeah, we do help each other a lot as well. But, I think there's one thing that especially creators and bloggers and anyone that is a service to others in some form has learned that that service shouldn't come for free, and oftentimes not trade either, unless the trade benefits you, if you're happy with it, but knowing your worth, but yeah, my aha moment was the past year. And I'm very, very, very excited of what's to come, because I have some big plans again. And now that I have Patty, like doing most of the day-to-day, I can actually go for these other bigger things. And I just sealed another contract today, so that was dope.
Hey.
Yeah, like it's going well. It's nice.
So if you could go back in time to when you were just starting the blog, what piece of advice would you give to yourself?
Don't get too emotional. Like, I think especially those early days, and as just a woman of color, first generation, first language is Spanish, not to get too, what's the word, sad and emotional over comments. Man, comments back in the day were brutal. I turned off all comments on Grimy Goods. Now I got so sick of all the spam and moderating them, and no one really comments on blogs as much anymore. They comment on the socials, but yeah, not to get too emotional. And like, sometimes I won't get emotional, but you do, it gets under your skin. I would have told myself, don't get too emotional. You're kicking ass, you're doing good. And you don't have to be, I guess, like Megan, you understand, I guess, like in the industry, especially back then, like, and as a woman, you have to feel, sometimes you have to look a certain way, you have to act a certain way, you got to fit in, and I wish I had the mindset I did now. I was like, oh, I don't give a fuck. I don't care about what your standards are or what you think. And I don't really give an F if, I don't know, like, just not care so much and just go with your own flow, and don't get too emotional when people are mean, or, Twitter battles, Twitter fights back in the early blogger days. Do you remember like Twitter battles, like blog against blog? Like I've done many, and it was always against like a man. And I've seen like other ones back in the day too, like hipster runoff, gorilla versus bear, like all back in the day. No matter what, like anyone, hurtful comments are hurtful, and people like to assume the success of a woman, especially of a woman, and they'll make up lies and this and that because this woman is succeeding and is threatening their bottom line. I just wish I figured those things out sooner. And also I wish there's lots of things I wish I did different, but then I didn't, because if I did certain things that I'm implementing now, I wish I implemented a while ago, because it would have made a lot more money. But at the same time, like, I was enjoying my life. There's something to be said about enjoying your life too. And I've done that, like through my engagement, through my single days, traveling, experiencing the world, because where I am now took a lot of work this past year. So yeah, I don't know. You can always do everything at any time. If you want to go travel and take off for your 2 years, do it. You come back and dominate.
Yeah, I think that there's something to be said too about just like kind of, when you're in like your 20s and you're kind of just learning like, oh, like, I feel like in that kind of period of your life, like there's a lot of pressure from just peers and other people just to do things, like go out and like you said, like dress a certain way, talk about certain things, like whatever. And like, I feel like as we age, like, it's just like kind of just age out of that a little bit, you kind of just do whatever you want to do.
The Gen Z generation is just much more embracing of, this is me. Like, I want to be comfortable today, like this and that, like, and I don't feel like our generation was like that too much, like it's just changed a lot, and it's very awesome for them. But at the same time, I'm like, oh, I wish I had that when I was starting out, the support especially. But yeah, like, I think I struggled with identity so much, not so much in the heyday of Grimy Goods, but like when I had my daughter, because, here I am, just started my own personal Instagram for the first time ever 5 years ago, because I always used Grimy Goods. There was a time where Grimy Goods was fused with my life and what we wrote about. And I am like looking at all these like perfect Instagram moms and their perfect kids and their perfect houses. And, it's not to say that, I do like those things too, but like, it was such a strange like transition to come from the indie world and then thrown into this motherhood Instagram world and trying to find your place in it. I was struggled for a bit. Like, I'm surprised I'm even wearing white. It's a cute dress though. I like it. But like, I've always worn black, grays, leathers, jean jackets, and I still do, but there was a time where my identity was so clueless. Like I was like, I'm a mom, but I'm also Grimy Goods. And I started changing my whole color palette, outfit, like florals, from what I was seeing these Instagram moms doing when they're flowy dresses and everything. And I thought for a while, like, I have to be more mommy for my daughter. And then now I'm like, so no, poor Sandra, what were you thinking? It's okay. And now it's like, no. Who cares if this is how you dress, or you're rock and roll, or your hair's always up in a bun, or you don't wear the cute flowy flowery dress dresses. This is me. And there's tons of moms like me, especially in LA. And like, I'm just glad I'm not that way anymore, because it was a tough time going through postpartum and anxiety and all these changes with your body and emotions. And it just makes you kind of lose yourself. So yeah, if you're going through that, just write it out.
So are there any upcoming projects that you are excited about that you can talk about?
I'm bringing back, so I started a column last year to focus on mothers and music, and it was called Sonic Motherhood. And we did about 3 interviews with local artists talking about music and motherhood and balancing it and the ugly truths of it all too. And I got such good feedback of it. And everyone's like, this should be a podcast, but I didn't want to commit to anything yet because I just didn't have time. But now I do. So it is going to become a podcast. And yeah, so we got the mics, and it's still in its infancy. I have the roster list of people I'm, reaching out to. And I think all the women we previously interviewed will be interviewed again. And I want to bring back Grimy TV, but in a, more of a, I guess, between two ferns setting. But the pandemic's kind of made that hard face to face, But Grimy TV will be coming back, and the Sonic Motherhood podcast is going to start. That's going to be anew. So instead of having the blog posts, there'll be a blog post for the podcast too. I'm going to do new website updates too, especially on mobile. There's a lot of updates that need to be done, and I have a list going of all the cosmetics that need to be done for Grimy Goods. It's been a while, and I do love the design, but it could be much more mobile friendly, I guess. It's funny too, because I look at some other sites who have not updated since 2000, but they still do fantastic because their digital real estate is, it's good. But I'm like, should I even do it? This site is just still looking like this, but I want to, for me, because I want it to be, prettier, and there's other elements that I want to be seen more. So new site design, Sonic Motherhood. I'm going to kickstart my newsletter again, which is another big no-no that I haven't followed my own advice. It's like you're sitting on thousands of emails and you haven't even done any newsletter in how long? But that for now.
Quite a list.
Yeah.
So where can our listeners follow you, follow Grimy Goods? Where are you hanging out online?
GrimyGoods.com, and it's the same everywhere across Twitter, Facebook, just @mention Grimy Goods. And then for me, just Grimy Sandra on Instagram. I don't even know what my TikTok name is, but it's not, I don't even have a photo. I don't know, but I'm going to start it, but it'll probably be Grimy Goods or Grimy Sandra.
Awesome. Yeah. We'll put links to all of the existing ones in the show notes.
I have a Twitter, but it doesn't say Grimy Sandra. It says Sandra Olinger. I need to make it consistent. But yeah, that's about it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for joining us today, Sandra. And thank you to all our listeners. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave us a review and be sure to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Until next time, stay sparkly.